Hi everyone. Well, my name is Claire Schimel and I'm here to do my week 7 video journal. Our last video journal for this class, which is kind of sad, but so we're ending it with our last chapter of the book, which is quite appropriate, I think. I think she did a great job of wrapping up this book with this final chapter. Yeah, so let's get started. So starting page 168, first sentence. Undoubtedly by now you realize that digital media, mass media, and popular culture are powerful resources for educators that need to be integrated into education across all subject areas. I think that's the huge takeaway from this course, right? This book definitely helped me realize how important all of these things are, and how as educators it's like our job to get this out to our students, right? At the end of that first paragraph, it talks about how there's no one size fits all recipe for success, it says, which I think is totally true, right? Every class is going to be different, every grade is going to be different. What works for one class isn't going to work for another, and I think that's really important to remember and to not get discouraged by. Say you have this awesome lesson plan that you used one year and you're like so excited to use it again and it just flops. It would be hard to not like kind of beat yourself up about that, but I think it's important, like the book says, that every class is different. They're going to have different interests, and so to not get discouraged, I guess, is kind of what I took from that. Next paragraph, and the next page, I really loved the chart that she included about like what motivates teachers to teach about digital and media literacy. I loved it, like checking off the little, like the I guess the statements that she had in there. So I really love this because I'm like, this is why teaching is so amazing. Talking about how, I am interested in one aspect of this, but I bet everybody in our class probably has a different interest in when they teach digital and media literacy. And that's so awesome, right? Like all of these kids are going to get all of these different viewpoints or focuses. And it's so cool, right? So when I was doing like checking the box, I think the one that stood out to me the most was to strengthen students' ability to resist the negative messages present in mass media, digital media, and popular culture about violence, materialism, stereotypes, and sexuality. It's just really like, I think a big takeaway of this for me was thinking about social media. I thought about that a lot throughout this whole course. Like, and I'm thinking like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and how much those affect young people these days. So I think that is really important to me, to help students realize how to handle the information that we see on there, how to be critical of it, how to consume it in a healthy way. So I think that would be like my focus in my classroom, I guess you would say. But just reading this list of how many different things there are, it's amazing about how many different ways you could go when you're teaching this topic, right? I wrote, this is our opportunity as teachers to find what we want to showcase and kind of go for it. If it's interesting to us, I'm sure we can find a way to make it interesting to our students. So I think it's really important to find what you also find as interesting, right? Okay, next page, 170. I think this was talking about, or it made me think about, it says school leaders can help teachers embrace new ideas and instructional practices. So this kind of made me think of how now I'm 27. By the time I finish this master's, I'll be 28. I'm pretty young. I feel like I'm still pretty with the times, the technology. But I'm like, okay, Claire, 10 years from now, how are you going to feel? 20 years from now, 30 years from now, how are you going to feel, right? So it's like, I really need to push myself because I think I'm on top of it now, but I'm probably not. There's probably many things I don't know how to integrate, use, whatever. So I need to make it a point to keep myself on top of those things, stay educated, go to a conference and learn about new ways to use technology in the classroom, but just staying on top of it now so I don't get too far behind, I think is kind of what made me think of that, because I think these days things are changing so quickly, it would be very easy to fall behind and get really overwhelmed by all these new things that are coming out, right? Let's see. Yeah, because I wrote like, who knows what teaching is going to look like even 10 years from now, 20 years from now, right? Which is really interesting. Page 171, talking about teachers need to support each other and be open and mindful of other teachers' opinions, be willing to listen, learn, change. This chapter also really made me think about how there's so many pieces to like a curriculum and things like that. I've never worked in like an elementary, middle school, high school in the States, so I don't really know anything about like state curriculum or anything like that. But I really do see now how many hoops you have to go through if you want to make a change in your classroom, like curriculum wise. You know, you have to get many teachers on board and figure out how this is going to work for the whole school. And you have to have administration that's willing to work with you as well. So that this was eye opening for me to read, knowing that it might not always be easy. You might not have cooperative coworkers or higher ups, your bosses, your administrators, right? So that was eye opening for me. So you want to find a school system that would support you in these things that you're looking for. So I guess that's important as a teacher to find a place where you fit in or that's willing to change, right? Let's keep going. Page 175 and 176, talking about student voice. And I was writing about student-centered classrooms, and our book is talking about how it's way easier said than done, which I think is totally true. We read all these things about listen the teacher talk and let the students talk and blah, 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 but that you can have the best game plan going into the class, and then class starts and you're like, oh my gosh, what have I got myself into? And all of that student-centered stuff goes out the window and you're just trying to get through the class period, right? So I think it's being overwhelmed is okay, but learning how to get past that and how to get it back to the students. If you feel it kind of slipping away from you, keep going, keep trying, right? And it also talked about how it's really hard for teachers. You have to be confident in your classroom management skills. You have to watch the students who talk a lot, that they don't drown out the ones who are too quiet. So it's just really complicated. Everything about a student-centered classroom is complicated. I think obviously the benefits outweigh the hard parts of it, but definitely something you gotta learn, you gotta work at, right? You gotta try. Let's see. Page 179, I liked how they were talking about technology policies, especially the one about cell phones, how one school, they put like this policy of kind of like students get to police their own cell phone usage. Like they made the policy of using it when it's appropriate. So they're not banning it, they're not taking it away from the students, but they're letting them use their judgment of when to use their cell phones. And it said they had like this huge positive reaction to it, and students were using their cell phones less and using it at times when it was appropriate. Lunchtime, in between classes, which I think is so good. And it's kind of what I was talking about in the, week 5 video about how we don't want to, this is wrong, you're doing this wrong, but kind of leading students to do their own thing, figuring it out on their own, and it's going to have a better reaction, right? So that's also been a big takeaway for me, is like, we're not pushing these things on our students. We kind of are just helping them get to where we want them to be, right? And hopefully they'll have those aha moments and it will work out, right? So that was cool to read about. Page 184. Let's see. Oh, I liked this about how, talking about looking out for students. I loved how it said school defines success. There's many students who aren't going to be successful in school defined success ways, right? So maybe teaching about media literacy can help bring out that in some students. And the author had great stories about how she had experience of students kind of like coming out of their shell when they do like a media project or something like that. So I'm like, this is such a great thing to teach, and maybe students will kind of find their niche in the classroom. And so that's really exciting that maybe a student who's been struggling or doesn't talk that much or is not really interested could kind of pop out of their shell and feel like they're a part of something, right? So that's always awesome. And ending, the responsive teaching, I loved how she ended the book with those bullet points of kind of summing up all the things that we can do to help in our classrooms, to help our students. It was just really great. I think it was a great way to end the chapter because they were just quick little things that you could really take in and think about how you could apply them into your own classroom. One that I did want to point out was the first one, actually. Activate students' prior knowledge. Teachers celebrate and respect student life and media experience, their interests and passions, and their understanding of the world. This kind of brought me back to teaching ESL and how we're going to have kids, students, adults, whatever, people from all over the world with all different experiences with media, culture, everything, and that is just so exciting to think about all the possibilities we will have in the classroom of things to talk about, people's experiences, that we can just really learn from each other. So I think that was great. A good ending to the chapter, good ending to the book, really. And yeah, I think that's it. So thank you for watching. See you later.